You guys getting pumped? Welcome, welcome. Nice to see some familiar faces here.
Absolutely, and some new faces too.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna stop my silly music now.
I'm gonna get a webinar DJ maybe.
Yeah. Do you guys know that John and I both worked in college radio? Fun fact about your Brooklyn.
Way back in the day.
TLDR, we're a bunch of nerds. Welcome friends. We'll give people a few more minutes to get started. If you're joining us now, feel free to drop questions in the chat or the Q&A. There, it goes to the same place. We will probably not answer them live. We'll probably answer them at the end when we do a Q&A.
Yeah, excited to hear people's questions. And AJ and I are being friendly now, but once we get started, the gloves are off. So
that's true. It's true. Yeah, say hi. Drop a line in the chat. We're gonna do some polls, which I think I know how to do. So I'm gonna throw up a first poll right now. Yes. Okay. Allow panelists to vote. All right. Here we go. I'm launching a poll. Please vote. It's anonymous. Here we go.
Ooh. Okay, now.
All right. Do you think it's better to rent or buy? Ooh, buy. Ooh, wow, look at that. This is gonna be good. All right. For those of you just trickling in, we have a poll going that I will leave up until 6:05, and then we will end the polling and share the results. If we don't know you, I know most of you. I recognize most of these names, but there are quite a few names I don't recognize. Please say hello and how you found us. Hello, Bobby. How are you? Good to see you. Good to see you, man. All right.
A lot of signups for this one, AJ. Excited. We've been looking forward to this for a while.
We have. All right. Should we go ahead and get started, John?
I think so. I think we can get going here. Got a lot to talk about.
We do indeed. All right. I am going to share my screen. All right. Oops, that's the chat. Can you guys see that? Yes, great. Yes. Okay, so let's get started. We are all here for the great debate. Is it better to rent or buy your home? Before we get started, fasten your tray tables in the upright and locked positions, mute your Slack notifications. There's a lot of content here. Yeah, exactly. Exits in the back. Get your water, get your wine, whatever you got. Drop your questions for us in the chat or Q&A box. We'll do our best to answer them live while the other person's talking, but we'll circle back to everything at the end. Some of you gave us questions beforehand. Those are at the end as well. We're going to record this. It will be posted to our website, brooklynfi.com/events. Let us know what topics you'd like to see in the future. We've got webinars happening about every 2 weeks this whole year. This is going to be the best one, but there's some other good ones in there as well. So check that out. Our combatants today, my colleague and former friend, John Owens, will be defending the rent position. And me, AJ Ayers, I will be arguing for the buy. We both have a lot of designations. I just want to point out that I have one more designation than John does. For now. All right, shall we? All right. So yeah, before we get into it, this debate is hotly contested. You can watch many YouTube videos of people talking about, is it better to rent or buy financially? Is it a good investment to buy a home? I don't know, right? John and I were talking about how to present this information to you. And one of the things we thought about was, let's make a giant spreadsheet. Let's run out these scenarios. Let's do a side-by-side comparison. We came to the conclusion that that is a fool's errand, right? That's impossible to do because there's so many different factors that go into this decision. You know, it being a low interest rate environment right now is not a good enough reason to buy a home. the boiler could explode. There could be a $60,000 bill that was unexpected. There's so many unknowns that when you say, how do we compare these things exactly side by side? It's completely impossible. But we have some assumptions that we're going to agree on before we start to pull each other's hair out. So home values increase at about 3% a year. That is the national average. Some areas are higher, of course, right? But not by much. There's a lot of hype around, if you buy in New York City, your home's going to go up 20% a year. Not true. It's around 3% for most major cities. Rents increase at about 2% a year. It's about what we can reasonably expect from inflation. Some areas are higher, but not by much. The average person stays in their home for 7 years. It is highly unlikely that you will stay in the home you buy for the full term of a standard mortgage, which is 30 years. We can reasonably expect an investment portfolio to return 8% annually, right? So this is a long-term average. How does a diversified stock market portfolio perform over time? It's about 8% a year. But between 2010 and 2020, it was actually a lot higher. It was actually 13.6%. So, looking at these numbers, we can kind of expect to do better from an investment standpoint in the stock market than we can by purchasing a home. There's a lot more that goes into this. So I will turn it over to you, John. Blow us away.
Awesome. Well, here we are on Team Rent. I'm John Owens. I'm one of the lead planners here at Brooklyn FI, joining you from my apartment. AJ, where are you right now? Are you in your apartment?
I am in my apartment.
Thank you. All right. Well, that is the end of my debate. No, we're just getting started here. And so let's look at reason number 10. We've got a countdown here on the next slide, AJ. Reason number 10 to rent. Number 10, browsing Zillow is a hobby. It's not an investment. We do not take stock tips from Reddit, and we don't assume every home on Zillow is a good investment. I think it's a really fun thing to shop around, to look at places to own, but this is a huge financial decision. Buying a home is arguably probably the biggest one-time expense that many people have in their lives. And so it's something we need to take seriously. We need to be very deliberate about. And renting's a lot easier than that because it's a much less of a commitment than home ownership. And so reason number 10, Zillow's a hobby. Don't get hooked and caught up in the fascination. The next reason number 9, as we count down here, is that buying a home is not as easy as you think. I used to joke, it's a family thing, how to buy a home with no money. We used to joke around, it's a really hard thing to buy a home. It's much more than, hey, I'm looking at a house, this is the price, I need to come up with 20% of that. There's a bunch of other costs that come into play. And so you first need to get a real estate lawyer, you need to get a broker, you need to get an inspector, you need to get a mortgage lender. And so gather the troops. The next piece is this. Buying a home, it all moves fast. And before you know it, you're on the phone offering 10% above the market price, and they want to do an all cash offer. And it's a crazy thing. And so renting doesn't have that. Renting doesn't have these huge transaction costs. You could see the summary here of closing costs that come into play. AJ, this is crazy how much this can cost at times for people on top of just buying, on top of just buying a house.
That's true.
And so from there, renting has some very low transaction costs. You don't need to come up with a 20% down payment, okay? Buying a place, a lot of our clients buying places in the city, on the low end, we see often $700,000, $800,000 or more in terms of cost. And so if you need to come up with a 20% down payment, that's $200,000 to $300,000 sometimes. I don't know about you, but a lot of people don't have $200,000 to $300,000 in the bank, and there's those other costs on top of it. So big commissions for real estate agents and those surprise closing costs. Renting, all that goes away. Your transaction costs to rent an apartment are how much do you need for a security deposit? Maybe 1 or 2 months rent, maybe a couple of bucks to move, but that's a heck of a lot less than the upfront costs that come into play when you're buying a place. And so you're not burning your money in the process. 2 of my favorite memes here, property taxes, HOA fees, all of those other recurring costs. And so we've talked a little bit about, home ownership in terms of the one-time upfront transaction costs. The other side, folks, we got to be careful with those things that come up every single year because they can really add up. Property taxes are one of them. They increase. You don't have much control over them. HOA fees can get really expensive, especially for our clients in the city. And so sometimes it feels like you move into a house and then it owns you instead of you owning it. And the nice thing about rent is it's negotiated and reviewed every year. You don't really get to negotiate your property taxes, Margot.
John, how many times have you moved in the past 5 years?
3 times.
Woo. Okay.
And none of them required me to get $200,000 for a down payment, AJ.
Okay.
Moving on from here. This is a really, really big one, diversification. So we talked a little bit about the high transaction cost. So on one downside of home ownership is that you need to come up with all this money just to start the process of buying the home. The next step is it sucks up a lot of your money, and it also is one of the largest assets on your balance sheet in many instances. And so you're taking a bunch of your net worth and you're tying it up in an illiquid asset like a home. You can't sell a home very quickly. That's not a feasible thing to do in many instances. Sometimes the market's hot and you can, but oftentimes you lose your job and you need to sell your home. The economy's not doing well. It might not be the best market to sell a home into. And so the money that you put into a down payment on a home, for example, could be put into your business. We've got a lot of creatives, we've got a lot of small business owners as clients. It could be put into retirement accounts and other savings to grow for you long-term in a diversified manner and in a way that is somewhat accessible and liquid, unlike, one piece of property on one street in one zip code. So this is a big one, AJ, that we see a lot. We lose out on diversification when we tie up all of our money or a big chunk of our money in our homes. And so the other thing, and I think we kind of alluded to this at the beginning, reason number 5 to rent is that homes aren't great investments. There, I said it. Very unpopular opinion, I think sometimes, but homes are not great investments. Prices appreciate just a few percent every year. They're a time suck. Homes take up a lot of your time. And so I know for some folks that's an attractive part about a home. It's an experience. But when you rent, you don't have to do the projects. You don't have to paint. You don't have to fix a whole bunch of things. They're illiquid. This is actually a picture of AJ when she was moving into her new apartment a few months back. And so glad to see you got the braces taken care of.
Rough. No, I would never do that myself. I would hire someone to do it because I am not handy and I do not want to spend my time stripping paint off the wall. Although I do like that wall.
I think it's a wallpaper.
Yeah, I
love wallpaper's
wallpaper.
Coming back.
I love wallpaper. We have a fantastic piece of wallpaper in one of our houses, which is a whole other story.
We're getting there. All right. Now we're getting serious. What are some of our top 4 reasons to rent? Number 4, this comes up a lot, especially as a financial advisor, worked with a couple hundred clients over my career so far, have helped many of them buy houses and go through that process. And the one thing that sticks out to me, even if they build a place, they never keep the house the way it is when they move in. There's always something they want to change. I'm waiting for my first client to buy a house and say, we're going to keep it exactly the same. Renovations cost a ton of money. Most people don't budget for them correctly, and they often go over budget. And good luck it's a tough time to find a good contractor on top of all that. And so it takes longer. It disrupts your life. When you're renting, you really don't have that problem. If you could just go ahead and finish that renovation, that would be great. It's a lot. And so when you have an apartment, you don't have to worry about a renovation. If the apartment company wants to renovate the place, you find another apartment. It's a bit of a pain in the ass along the way, but it's much different than having your home torn apart for months on end with no end in sight.
True.
Reason number 3, selling your home is really hard and expensive. By the way, AJ, weren't you trying to sell a place in New York City?
I knew this was coming. Yes, I am in the process of selling one apartment and I'm currently renting another. My husband and I our plan was to put our house on the market in early April. Like many of you, plans for 2020 got thrown off a bit. So we didn't get to list our house until June. We spent some time in California over the summer while the house was being shown by our agent. And we finally had an offer in September. That offer was accepted. And then unfortunately, there were some lawsuits discovered that were completely out of our control that had to do with the building and some construction and scaffolding companies. And that has dragged on for many, many months. And currently we are in a state of limbo. We want to sell, the buyer wants to get into the house, and we are kind of all stuck with our hands tied. So I currently have 2 apartments in Brooklyn, which is super fun on the cash flow. So that's the situation I'm in. We're gonna get out of it. We're gonna figure it out. We'll probably end up, making a profit on the place, but it hasn't been easy. It was not, let's list it, let's wait 2 months and sell it. It will, I imagine, be almost a year by the time we are through this process. So not great.
Not the easiest thing to sell a home. There's also just the logistical piece of that. Even if things do go well, hey, somebody wants to come look at it. AJ, get out, go for a walk. And, in COVID times, it's not the easiest thing to just like get out of your house and go somewhere. Big commissions for the real estate folks who will tell you, to change something and put more money into your house on the way out. But, I did see this, looking for pictures for here, AJ, free pizza with the purchase of a house. That might be the one thing that skews me over to the buy side. I would consider buying a place if it came with a free pizza. Just this appealed to me. Reason number 2, this is one I stress a ton with clients. And I think one of the most beautiful things about renting is the cash flow component. There are no extra costs. There are no surprises. There's no crap you need to fix when it breaks, when something falls apart. I, once moved into an apartment, my first week there, I woke up in the middle of the night, like, wow, it sounds like somebody's taking a shower upstairs or something. I'm like, no, that water is really close. No, 3 o'clock in the morning, the bathroom flooded. Well, it wasn't my problem. A maintenance person came and fixed it and cleaned it up, and it didn't cost me anything except for a few hours of sleep. That was great, and then the other piece of it is that produces predictability. And so one of the things we worry about from a financial planner's perspective is predictability of cash flow, predictability of expenses. And so often got the question, well, if I'm spending $2,500 a month in rent, I could spend $2,500 a month in mortgage. No, because you need to account for the things you need to fix, the maintenance you need to do, the taxes you're going to pay. And that can really be a strain on cash flow over time. If you lose your job or something, you could potentially lose your house if you stop paying your mortgage, or if you take a big pay cut. But if you rent, you can potentially move to just a cheaper apartment. And so this is AJ's favorite store in Brooklyn, You Break I Fix.
I want to take a moment to shout out You Break I Fix on Court Street, next to a great Italian restaurant. If you crack your phone screen, super, super nice folks. One of my favorite business names of all time after Brooklyn FI. So check it out if you live in Brooklyn.
AJ and I started out in radio, but that does not constitute a plugola, just so for regulatory purposes, in case people are wondering, no commissions were paid for that advertisement. And then the number 1 reason to rent is flexibility. Quitting your job, girlfriend breaks up with you, moving across the country, doing all three a few times, long story. Anyway, quick and easy and relatively painless to rent and to move and to get out. And to make that change. It's not like you need to sell a property. It's not like you need to plan this out 6 or 8 months ahead of time to make it happen. Renting is incredibly flexible. And so for many of the folks that we work with who are younger, who are tech professionals, who are climbing their career ladder, who are, just in a constant state of change. We tend to encounter folks, AJ, who are in a very constant state of change. Renting makes a ton of sense because there's, you might wake up one day and it's like the new job's in Southern California and I live in Brooklyn today and I need to make that leap. And so I love the flexibility that renting provides. If you're going to stay in a place long-term, housing or buying a place might start to make sense. And I will cede the floor to you, AJ, to pitch us on your side of the debate.
Sounds good. There is a car alarm going off right outside my window, so we'll see how this goes. Brooklyn, hey. All right, there's a meme break quickly. Let's take a look at the poll results. So it looks like 27% of you think it is better to rent versus buying a home, and the other 73% of you think it is better to buy. And 27% of you are currently actively looking to purchase a home, and 35% of you are on Zillow every day, but you're not seriously looking. Awesome. All right, I am going to be talking about buying a house and why I think that is the best thing to do. Number 10, access to cheap or gifted capital. No one is going to loan you hundreds of thousands of dollars to invest in the stock market, right? And older generations are attached to real estate, whether that's your parents, grandparents, aunts or uncles. Some folks are very lucky to have family members who are excited to give them money or loan them money to, start their life. Imagine a scenario, you get engaged to your sweetheart, you go to Pops, and Pops says, "Oh, I'm so happy, you're getting married. I'm so excited for you to start your life together. I want to give you $50,000. You can use it towards a wedding, towards a home purchase, whatever you want." You get the check. 2 weeks later, you come back. "Pops, thanks so much for the $50,000. He goes, "Oh, what did you do with it? Did you buy a house?" "No, I invested it in the stock market in a diversified portfolio." "What? That was for a wedding. I wanted to throw you a beautiful party. I wanted you to buy a house." Pops, grandparents, not going to be excited that you used their money to invest in the stock market. They wanted something real. They wanted a party for your wedding, or they wanted to actually be able to visit that house, to be able to see a picture, to potentially come stay with you, which is a whole other issue for another webinar. But look, most of us are not in the position to have large cash gifts come in from family members. Most of us are going to be going to the bank to get a loan. If you go to the bank to get a loan today for a mortgage, we have seen lots of clients get approved for very large mortgages at around 3%. That is a fantastic, almost historically low rate. If you go to the bank and ask to borrow, $800,000 to invest in the stock market, they're going to probably charge you between 10 and 20% for a regular old personal loan, because there's no collateral, right? The bank gets to take the house back if you can't pay that mortgage. So we love the ability to access cheap capital when we're buying a house. Number 9, mortgages are awesome. There are tax savings, which we'll get into in a minute. You get to build up equity in a thing. You actually get to own something. That's pretty cool. So when you sell it, you actually get to make a profit, rather than when you're renting, you're just giving a guy a check or a girl a check each month. There's nothing that you get to walk away from when you're renting. Your mortgage payment stays the same as your income grows. Yes, of course, property taxes are going to go up, your maintenance is going to go up, as John mentioned, but the mortgage payment generally will stay the same, right? Of course, we could refinance, but you are really, when you sign that loan document, the interest that you're paying has already been factored into that monthly payment. So that likely won't change during the full term of the mortgage. And yeah, it's a great time to get a mortgage right now. Saw a mortgage rate today that was 2.75%. That is fantastic. When we look at mortgage rates, in the late 80s, early 90s, we were talking about double digits, right? Like 11, 13% to borrow money. We can talk about economics later about why that was a totally different environment, but yeah, it's a great time to borrow money. And yes, Oprah, this is one of my favorite memes. I think this is the most fun in making webinar slides I've ever had for our little pictures here at the bottom. All right, quick lesson in how mortgages work. I'm going to try to do this in 1 minute. All right, many of you will recognize this lovely screenshot from our fabulous financial planning software called Red Capital. Mortgages it's a loan, right? You say, I need this amount of money to purchase this asset, this house, from the previous seller or from the developer, whomever. In the early years of a mortgage, of a personal home mortgage, most of the money, most of your payment is actually going to be made up of interest. So it's not an even split between paying back the principal. So look, in this case, we're looking at $1 million house. We put down the traditional 20% down payment and we're borrowing $800,000. So what Right Capital did is it casted out the mortgage for the 30 years, of its term. That's pretty standard. And it actually breaks down our payment each year into what are we actually paying towards that principal of $800,000 and what is just an interest charge. I actually realized I didn't put the interest rate on here, but I think it was 3%. So look, in this first year of the mortgage, look at all that mortgage interest. There's $31,000 of mortgage interest. Now we get to deduct that on our tax return. John is going to poke me and say, well, actually, you can't deduct all of it because there's limitations and you can only deduct up to 750. Yeah.
Only the first 750,000, folks.
Thank you. Some older homes are grandfathered in, but yes, only up to $750,000 worth of house is deductible on your tax return. Now, a lot of you will ask, well, I don't know if I'm itemizing deductions. Can I actually deduct this mortgage interest? Now, at $31,000, most of you will be able to actually deduct all of this interest. It will push you into itemization territory because every person on their tax return gets a standard deduction. For this year, it's $12,200 per person. So if you're a married couple, that's $24,000. That's your standard deduction. This 31 is higher. So you will actually benefit from deducting this mortgage interest. Now let's fast forward 30 years, going in our little time machine here, and we go down to the bottom, and that last line, in the 30th year of the mortgage, we are paying almost all principal, right? So we are going to end that mortgage and we only have $978 of interest left to pay. So that's going to be a much lower tax deduction for us.
And AJ, it might be cut off on some of their screens, so I want to read them the numbers, which is principal of $44,854, mortgage interest of $978. So you're right, you probably wouldn't get a write-off then if the tax code looks the way it does today. One of the other things to point out, the far right column, sorry, AJ, I'm still debating the rent side.
Hey.
The total housing cost at that point is $76,000. So just because you have a mortgage doesn't mean your housing costs don't go up over time with property taxes and insurance.
All right. So that mortgage interest, that's deductible. Property taxes, it really depends. If you're in a state like New York, the ability to deduct these is going to be limited because you're probably already paying a lot of taxes to the state through your paycheck. So due to the 2018 tax law, it's unlikely that you're going to be able to deduct this property tax. So that's mortgages in a nutshell. That definitely was not a minute, but I think this is important to understand. All right, number 8, automated savings. This is one of my favorite reasons to buy a home, is the idea of forcing you to save each month. We can argue all day about whether the stock market is a better investment or, buying a house is a better investment, and we will argue all day. At the end of the day, if you have a mortgage, you are going to do whatever it takes to pay that mortgage, because if you don't, you will lose your house. A lot of us are going to set up savings goals. I'm going to invest $3,000 a month into the stock market. Well, if I have a bad month or, I notice my account balances are pretty low, I might stop that payment and I'm not going to save as much. A mortgage, you will definitely do whatever it takes to make that payment each month. So that's why I love mortgages as a forced savings habit. Shane was saying that he watched all 4 Toy Story movies last week. So I was inspired by this little meme here.
The first time?
I don't know. Shane in here? Shane, you there? Anyway. All right. Number 7, the market.
It was sick, by the way.
It was sick. Oh, Toy Story is sick. Yeah, Toy Story is sick. The market. Can you pick a winner, right? Sometimes the housing market it's a great time to get in, right? We hear that a lot. Maybe you're in a city where the rental market is expensive and buying a home is the only option. A lot of our Brooklyn and Manhattan clients, have moved around this year and they show up in a city, like Detroit or, Denver, and, they look at the rental market and they're like, these apartments suck. These are new apartments, they're run down. Actually buying a home can make a lot of sense in that situation. If you get in early on a neighborhood that's changing and you are leading that first wave of gentrification, also another topic for another time, that's awesome for you, right? You're getting in when home values are, still low before there's a giant spike. For example, in Austin, Texas in 2009, that would have been a great time to buy property because, as most of you know, there was a huge tech boom. Lots of folks lived there. Austin had so much money poured into it. And you could have sold that little 2-bedroom house that you bought for, I don't know, $120,000 in 2009 for 6 or 7 times that in 2020.
We should read the audience in on this. This is a huge dig on Shane, who almost did that exact thing in about 2011.
That is true. Reason to buy, number 6, taxes. So we get that mortgage deduction that we talked about earlier. potentially that property tax deduction as well. And this is a cool one. That is if you sell your main home, your main residence, and you've lived in it for about 3 years, you get to exclude $250,000 of your gains per spouse when you sell. So if you bought the house for $500,000, 5 years ago, you've lived in it, you're now selling it for $1 million, that $500,000 of gain, you get to exclude completely if you're married. And we have our boy, Billy Clinton, to thank for that. This is my favorite Bill Clinton meme. Not him specifically, but this law went into effect during his presidency. So thank you, Bill. Number 5, security. Having a place of your own.
Can we just pause a second, AJ?
Yeah, let's pause.
This is the best picture of the entire.
Having as many pets as you want. I guarantee you this very happy woman is not renting this apartment. And if she is, she's not getting her security deposit back. I will tell you that much. But no, in all seriousness, a landlord can't kick you out when they sell the building. That's security for your kids. Kids don't like to move around a lot, right? Having to move, as a 6-year-old and have to go to a new school, make new friends, not great. And elders, it's interesting. She'd be mad that I called her an elder, but my mom and I were talking last week, and she's been renting, she's been bopping around, she's been going on this adventure, but she's been burned a few times where she moves into a great place, she loves it, she settles in, and then the building gets sold, or she's living in the carriage house, the main house gets sold, and she's had to move all these times, and it's been really disruptive. So having that security, knowing that you're in control of where you live, that's a great reason to buy a house.
Especially if you want 30 pugs.
If you want 30 bucks. Number 4, it's tangible and easy to understand. Look at this group of good-looking, diverse people having a great time in their loft apartment that they just bought in some city. Look at that cool Smeg refrigerator. These people are having a great time.
Where are their masks?
This was pre-COVID. This was filmed pre-COVID. Real estate is something you can feel and touch, right? Your family is going to be very proud of you. You can talk to all your friends about it. You cannot host a party in your stock portfolio. Remember that, kids. And the stock market could be intimidating, right? A house, I see it, I understand it. A mortgage, I understand what I'm doing. Stock market, with investing in the market without understanding it, without having some guidance, it's hard. It's hard to break into it. I get that. Number 3, building equity. So you get to access all of this money that you've borrowed from the bank. And as you build equity in that house, as you pay down more of that principal, you can actually borrow against your house. You may have heard of this. It's called a HELOC, or a home equity line of credit. That's a great way. We sort of think of that as like a backup emergency fund. So if you ever need to access cash quickly, you can generally borrow against your home from yourself. And there's lots of interesting tax benefits around that. A lot of times people use those to do renovations around the house or repairs. So HELOC can be a great way to access a lot of capital quickly and at very low interest rates. And look, home values can increase more rapidly than the national average in some areas at the right time. Here's a headline from some Brooklyn blog that, how home prices had surged in Brooklyn 50%. This is from 2018, of course. So if you get in at the right time and you build that equity over 5 to 15 years, you can make quite a large profit on your house, even if you're not staying there for the full 30 years of the mortgage. Number 2, you get to lock in that low housing payment, right? That mortgage is going to stay the same for the whole term of it. Yes, John, the property taxes are going to go up. Yes, maybe the maintenance fees are going to go up, but that single price is going to stay the same, and your income is likely going to go up. So it's your housing cost is going to feel like it is less than, it is going to feel like a smaller percentage of your income. So look at these lovely elderly folks who are happy in their home. They paid off their house. They have no housing costs other than just maintenance and of course property taxes. But when we talk about retirement, a lot of you on this who are watching this are clients. We're going to talk about what happens at age 70. We're going to need to start pulling from those 401ks and those IRAs. We want to pull out as little as possible. We don't want to touch the principal. So having no housing payment or a low housing payment is a great way to minimize our withdrawal rate.
And AJ meant senior citizens, not elderly people.
What did I say?
Elderly people,
Elderly.
AARP members.
Oh yes, AARP members. Yes, exactly. All right, number one reason to buy, the feels. Numbers aside, the real reason to buy a home is because it feels good. You can paint and drill holes in the wall to your heart's content. Is there anything better in life than custom built-in bookshelves with Eames chairs and sunken living rooms? No, is the answer to that question. Buying a home is an emotional decision. I think even though I'm defending the buy the buy position here, most of you know, my position of renting versus buying. I'm looking at this long list of folks who are attending. You and I have had conversations about whether we should rent or buy a house. But really, it is all about the emotions. If you feel very strongly that home ownership is right for you, you can do it financially. Yeah, it's awesome. Look at these built-in bookshelves.
AJ, what's that behind you in your apartment?
Those are bookshelves.
Okay, thank you.
Not built in, custom, but not built in. They had to be disassembled. And anyway, long story. All right. What about a vacation home? Look at this little Scandinavian number here. I'd love to have that with that little hot tub. Look at that. All right. John, tell us about some numbers here.
All right. So we've got cost to buy $600,000. We've got some annual costs, property taxes, $6,000. Insurance of $2,000 and maintenance of $5,000. That brings your total annual cost to own at about to $37,000, which is $711 a week. And so, AJ, similarly, what can we do with that much money? That seems like a lot to me.
It does seem like a lot of money. And look, the biggest question about a vacation home is, are you going to use it? And vacation homes, this home is beautiful, right? I don't think we're going to get this house for $600,000. Do you?
I don't think so. I think it might look just a little bit different.
I think it's going to look like that. I think that's what we're going to get for $600,000. A lot of you are looking to escape the city. I get it. This year has been really hard. We've had conversations about when is the right time to move upstate or, buy in Pennsylvania. Obviously we're focusing on New York. 75% of our clients are in New York. But really this goes for any home outside of a major city. So look, we've got a comparison here that, if you're going to spend $300 a night for an Airbnb or a hotel, that's going to cost you around $2,000 a week. If you're going on vacation for 8 weeks a year, which is quite a lot, it's going to be a lot cheaper to continue to rent or to continue to go on those temporary little vacations. You really have to know that you're going to be using this home more often. I think I just stole your thunder there, John.
No, that's okay. That's okay. I'm all right. Anytime you advocate for team rent, AJ, that is perfectly fine with me. And so on this kind of, rent versus buy, especially when it comes to the vacation home, AJ, great point. How much time are you going to spend there? Because you're really, when you put this big down payment into a vacation home, you're prepaying for vacations. And so this doesn't only come with, this comes with an obligation of sorts. This is where we have to go now. We have the cabin at the lake, and you might love the lake and you might have great memories at the lake, but do you want to spend every single vacation at that place? Another thing I like to point out, we didn't talk about it a ton here, is just proximity. The further away this place is, the harder it is to get there, the less time you'll probably spend there. It's an expense, and so I encourage you to think about the memories that you want to make and that emotional side, as AJ talked about. One of our attendees asked, what if you rent out your vacation home? And that's one of the things we want to address here. I think there's this kind of fallacy of, I'm going to buy a vacation home and I'll just rent it out when I'm not using it. Well, when are you going to use it? Oh, I'm going to use it in the summer. I'm going to go to the lake at the summer. Well, who wants to go to the lake when it's not the summertime? The time when you want to use it is the time when you're going to get the most amount of money out of it for renting. And so it is a headache, it is expense. There are a bunch of hidden costs associated with it, like renovation, like repairs, boats. Who doesn't want a boat? Shane's not here, but he would appreciate that. And then how much time you're going to spend there. And so this is a really big opportunity cost question. You're sinking a lot of money into a rental, a property for vacation that you think you're going to monetize. All of a sudden, you're a landlord that you never intended to be, and you're locked in to going one place on vacation all the time. And I don't know about you, AJ, but I like to switch it up in terms of where I go on vacation.
I do too. I do too. All right, but there are still very good reasons to buy a vacation home. Family, memories, having a vacation home near your loved ones or one your loved ones can access is priceless, right? That really, you can't really put a price on, this is our family home. It's this little cabin that we go to every summer. I mean that sort of in a sappy, silly way, but that's real, right? We can't discount that feeling, making those memories for our future children, things like that. If it doesn't impact your ability to reach financial independence, a vacation home is a wonderful way to spend your hard-earned money, right? A lot of our clients are, in major cities like New York. They're looking at buying homes that are, 2 to 3, the home that they want in New York City is going to be $2 or $3 or $4 million. That's not feasible for a lot of folks. Often the slightly cheaper starter vacation home is a great way to scratch that property ownership itch. It's easier to achieve than the full-size home, in a major city. And look, treat yourself. You had a great windfall. You had a successful exit. Your company went public in the last couple of years. Yeah, buy the cabin. Invite me. I'm free. Cool. So who won? I'm going to throw out another poll and see if our numbers changed. I don't know how to do that. Okay, a new poll.
The answer here, though, is that, in our opinion, it really depends. What is important to you? What can you do financially? What are your priorities? Because I have to say that when we talk to a lot of folks, some of the things that we hear are flexibility, about change, about predictability of cash flow. And to be honest with you, when we have that serious conversation, can you really see yourself staying in this place for 7 to 10 years, which is honestly about how long you need to stay, especially if you're buying a place in the city for it to be, viable, then you really, you need to commit to that. And a lot of people aren't willing to do that.
Yep, it's true. It is true.
So one final PSA, we want to kick the Zillow/StreetEasy habit. So delete the app from your home, unsubscribe and block all emails, go on actual Tinder instead of housing Tinder, folks.
If you're single, of course.
If you're single, yes, just to be clear. Start planning your post-COVID vacation and go for a walk. There's a great SNL skit with Daniel Levy about Zillow and the obsession from a few weeks ago. I encourage you to watch it as you're deleting the app from your phone.
True.
We've got more events coming up, brooklynfi.com/events. I think we've got 3 webinars coming up in March, AJ.
We do.
And a lot of fresh content, and the blog is live now, so check that out. We also love the New York Times rent versus buy calculator. If you're trying to figure this out, it'll really help simplify things. Always happy to talk about that with clients, of course, as they're pondering these big financial decisions.
Yeah, for those of you who are hoping for some concrete numbers, we really love the New York Times rent versus buy calculator. If you're a client, obviously just let us know. We're happy to walk you through it, put in some numbers, tell you why we made those certain choices. All right, thanks for listening. Now we're gonna go read the chat, of which I see there are about 36 messages. This photo was taken pre-COVID. John and I have actually never met in person, even though we hang out on Zoom all day for 15 hours.
I'm 6'7".
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's hit our questions from those of you who politely pre-registered with the question. If I had enough money to buy a home, but I'm in a new city that I'm not sure if I'll stay, is it better to rent or buy? Mr. Owens, what do we do here?
It is better to rent if you're not sure if you're going to stay somewhere. That's an easy one, hands down. Rent until you figure that out.
Yeah, it's really hard to get back. You're going to pay all those closing costs up front. It's really hard to get back those closing costs if you're not staying in the home for 5 to 7 years. At what threshold does buying a home push you to itemize your deductions? We sort of answered this earlier. Essentially, if you're single, the standard deduction is $12,200. It's double that for a married person or married couple. So that threshold, if your mortgage interest is more than $12,200, the next dollar of mortgage interest over that will be deductible on your tax return, probably. asterisk, always a probably. Number 3, what homeowners taxes are applicable in 2021? Not exactly sure what you mean here. Property taxes are determined locally. So when you're browsing those Zillow listings, you can actually see a reading of what the property taxes are going to be, or an estimate of them for that particular property. Anything to add there, John?
Yeah, I mean, just 2 quick hitters. The state and local tax deduction is still capped for those who itemize at $10,000. And so many of our clients who are high earners have pay $10,000 in state income taxes, so they don't get to write off the property taxes. The other thing I'd point out about property taxes is in many states, when you buy a place, if the last time it was sold was $300,000 and you're buying it for $800,000, your property taxes are going to be reset at a much higher price. And so you want to be cognizant of that when the Zillow property tax number may not be indicative of what your actual taxes are going to look like.
That is true. What should I know about buying outside of the city limits, Airbnb, part-time home, while I'm also renting inside the city? I think the big thing to point out here is that, are you ready to become a business owner, and are you ready to go into the service industry? Because that is what running an Airbnb is, right? You need bookkeeping, you need an extra form on your tax return, you need to keep your guests happy, you need to be around to fix, the air conditioner's not working, you need to be around, or you need to pay someone, usually 10 to 15% of the fees you're taking in, to be around to fix that. So yeah, just be aware that the dream of the Airbnb that is cash flow positive is just that. It is a dream. I have not seen very many cash flow positive rentals in my hundreds of tax returns that I've looked at. Maybe Shane, you can weigh in here if you've seen any cash flow positive Airbnb.
Very few in the returns that I've seen. And my first question for anybody who says this is, are you ready to be a landlord? Do you want to deal with all that? And then, is it profitable? And oftentimes getting a yes answer to both those questions is really tough.
Yeah. Is now a good time to buy a home in New York City? Do you expect the market to get better or worse for buyers in the next 12 months? I don't know, man. I have no idea. Do I think, anecdotally, is it a good time to buy a home in New York City? Probably. Yeah, I think a lot of folks have left, have decided that they don't need to live in New York anymore, and they have gone to the cities where they have always wanted to live but couldn't because their job was tied to New York. So do I think there's more inventory out in the market? Yeah, I do. Is that a reason to immediately rush out right now and buy a house? No, I don't think so. How do I expect the market to get better or worse for buyers in the next 12 months? If you're going to force me to make a prediction, this is not advice, this is just
AJ's crystal ball. Stay tuned, folks. Here we go.
What I think is going to happen is that, I think it's going to get a little worse for buyers in the next 12 months. I think a year from today, I think we will find that housing prices are going to be a little bit higher than they are now, a little bit more than that average 3%. That's just from personal experience, from looking around. I'm happy to share my story. I was looking to buy a home in Brooklyn, didn't really find anything I liked. I thought things were actually overpriced, and ended up with a beautiful apartment in Clinton Hill that I'm very, very happy with renting. And I would be happy renting this apartment for the rest of my life, honestly. I can't say that will actually happen, but we're very happy renters here. What does the currently low interest rate affect when someone should buy? What do you think, John?
Yeah, it certainly makes it easier to buy a home if interest rates are low, but that should not be the deciding factor. I remember I had a client once, they were looking to buy a second home about 10 years away from retirement, and they were, interest rates are low. They wanted to lock in the low interest rate and buy this second home that they were going to have 2 homes for 10 years. No interest rate change is going to make up for the difference in cost of maintaining 2 homes for a really long period of time. So do not let the interest rate piece wag the dog. That being said, if you are serious about buying and you're buying a place, shop around and get the lowest interest rate that you can, and optimize that piece. That's really important.
Wow.
Whoa.
Wow. Look at that. That was a flip, a 100% flip.
Thank you, folks.
Congratulations, sir. You did well. Yeah. I mean, look, I think that is kind of indicative of what we're trying to do with this webinar, is that there's there's a lot of myths out there about home ownership, right? A lot of the laws, a lot of the tax laws incentivize you to buy a home. So it seems like a really great idea. It's not right for everyone, right? And that's what we were trying to get across here, is that it's a very personal decision, but it is quite telling that a lot of you flipped. So I'm gonna.
We do have another question that came in the chat real quick.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna jump into the chat and look for some questions. I'm just gonna stop sharing my screen so I can type nasty things about John to Shane in Slack. But let's go to the chat. John, did you have a question you wanted to answer?
Yeah, so Jeremiah asked, if you rent in a neighborhood to test it out, you can easily get priced out of the neighborhood when you want to buy. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's so hard because neighborhoods change. In New York, we see these like tiny little micro neighborhoods, but what if you buy in that neighborhood and you hate it? Or what if you buy in that neighborhood and, you get a job offer in LA and you got to move, the next month or something. And then you're stuck either selling the home quickly at a loss or being a landlord, in two different cities. So that is a tough question. Yeah, I would say still rent first. The threat of the wrong home ownership decision is bigger than missing out on, a couple $1,000s in price.
Yeah, I agree, AJ. I want to say on the other side of that, and I'm not advocating for the buy side, just to be clear, but all of these big financial decisions that you make over the course of your life, whether it's selling off stock options, whether it's buying a home, it takes some numbers, it takes some very quantitative assessment, but it also takes a leap of faith to execute on it. And so there's never going to be a perfect time to buy a home, necessarily a perfect time to start a family. A lot of these things don't necessarily make financial sense, but they're wonderful things and you create wonderful memories. And, I'll be the first to admit, I didn't grow up in an apartment. I grew up in a home, and I'm very thankful for that. And I have lots of wonderful memories of it. And so now that the poll's in, I can, say the pros about your side, AJ.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I was looking through the questions. It was just mostly Shane talking some shit. Hey, Bobby. Hey, Jeremiah. Good to see you guys. Alex asked, what happens if you rent out your vacation home? I think we kind of covered that, but maybe I don't know if we talked about the actual changes in how you actually get to report that income. That's probably a whole other webinar, which is like how to report rental income. But essentially, if you're going to you're going to use that vacation house for more than 2 weeks out of the year, it's still just considered a vacation house and you can't really deduct expenses and things like that.
Yeah. So sick tax tip here for those of you who stuck around to this point. If you rent out a property for less than 2 weeks in a year, you do not have to report any of the income on your tax return. You don't get to deduct any of the expenses. And so like if let's say you're in a college town, big football team, they've got 6 home games and you rent out your place for 2 days a weekend for those 6 weekends, 12 days of income, probably a lot of money, no income reported on your tax return for it, no expenses to offset it. So hot tax tip.
Yeah, except then you don't get to use your home ever.
Yeah, go to your second vacation home. Find an Airbnb.
You go to your second vacation home.
You go to your second vacation home, AJ.
All right, everyone. This was fun. I hope you laughed, but also learned something. Obviously, we're having these conversations, in a much more specific, nuanced way with each of you individually. For those of you that don't know us, aren't clients, would love to talk to you about how we might be able to help you make this big decision. This is the biggest decision. Maybe this and having kids are like the 2 biggest decisions we're going to make as humans, or also whether to get married or not. Those are the 3 decisions that we got to make. So, we're here as your financial planners to make the best decision for you. I can't wait to have you all over to my apartment. You got this like huge living room. Yeah, there will be parties here. I promise that. That is it.
The in-person webinar coming post-COVID 2020.
Yeah. All right, everyone. Great to see you guys. We will email you this recording early next week. Have a great evening.